So honored to be joined today by one of my personal favorite wrestling characters of all time, the one and only Father James Mitchell. Sir, welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, Phil. How the hell are you?
I'm doing great. You've gone by quite a few names. Should I call you James? Should I call you Jim? What works best for you?
Whatever works for you is fine.
Whatever. Okay. So you're hosting the next NWA pay-per-view on October 28th at the Masonic Temple in Cleveland. I'm going to ask you how to pronounce it because I looked it up and I think I was pretty much wrong. It's NWA Samhain?
Samhain is how it's pronounced. The way most people would pronounce it is Samhain.
That's what it looks like.
Probably because of Glenn Danzig's band from back in the 80s. But no, it's pronounced Samhain. It's like ancient Gaelic, that kind of thing. So, Samhain was an ancient festival. Basically, we borrowed parts of it and turned it into Halloween over time.
And so, how on earth did they ever get a guy like you to host such a celebration?
Well, when you're the devil at large in the company, certain things fall into your lap.
So my birthday is actually Halloween too.
Really?
Yeah. So what do you think fans can expect from this show? What are you looking forward to there?
Well, they've got a really good lineup, and there are still matches to be added, and I'm sure there are going to be stipulations to be added. The first real stipulation match going on is that I can know of is the NWA World Tag Team Championship, where Blunt Force Trauma with Aaron Stevens will be taking on Mike Knox and Trevor Murdoch in what he explained as a Knights of the Round Table tables match. Nice. Now, the tables, I guess, are going to be like literal round tables that the guys go through. Now, traditionally in wrestling, when you see somebody go through a table, it's your usual 6-foot table. And if somebody lands in the middle, just inertia kind of helps it break. I would imagine one of those little 4-foot round tables that they're probably going to have surrounding the ring with, they're going to be really, really hard. That's going to be a difficult thing to break. So that you can be sure that there's going to be a lot of pain involved there. And I'm sure there's not going to be any real rules to speak of other than the way the pin goes down through a table. But there are other stipulations and specialty matches to be added that have not been announced yet. But also, among other matches we have listed would be the Women's Tag Team Championship match with Pretty Empowered against Natalia Markova and Taylor Rising. We've got Colby Corino and Joe Alonzo in the NWA Junior Heavyweight match. Kenzie Page will be defending her title, women's television title, against Ruthie J. And the main event is going to be the new NWA World Champion, EC3, defending against Tom Latimer. And that ought to be a real barn burner, too, because those are two big, strong guys that can really chop meat out there.
So some of the theme of the show is going to be more sort of hardcore themed. Is that the kind of direction they're going in with this?
Yes, that is true.
Any of those matches stand out to you particularly? And you mentioned the Latimer EC3 one is something that might be pretty brutal. Just to kind of any thoughts on that one as you go into it?
Yeah, I mean, both of those are big guys. They're extremely talented. EC3 has basically reinvented himself over the last couple of years and undergone a pretty serious body transformation too. Latimer is a guy that I've always been impressed with from the day I met him when I first came into NWA at the NWA 73 pay-per-view a couple years ago. It's going. I think that's really going to stand out just in terms of pure wrestling and just two big guys beating the hell out of each other.
Right.
Billy Corgan really wants us to establish what he calls the NWA style, which is more snug, less crazy acrobatics, a lot more stiff punching and stuff like that. And those are two big guys that can really lay it in. So I'm expecting that to tear the house down.
Sounds like more of a believable style, more like believability within the in-ring action.
Yes, exactly.
What's this run been like in the NWA for you? How well do you fit with Billy Corgan and the crew there?
I love it. It's renewed my love of the wrestling business, which I'd kind of lost for a while, got disenchanted. But it's a great locker room and a great product. And I really think that people, if you haven't given it a shot yet, you really should check out the NWA wrestling program, the current one, of course. Right now, he has it streaming on YouTube. He will be going to other platforms soon. You can catch this pay-per-view on Fight Network. That's FITE Network. But anyway, to get back to answering your question, creatively, it's been great. One of the things that sets NWA's product apart from, say, WWE is you don't have scripted promos. So you have a lot of freedom to be yourself. Billy does not try to turn you into something that you're not, or put words in your mouth that don't belong there. And you can generally tell, no matter how good the performer is, if he's had to rehearse 3 pages of dialogue, plus remember, what he's going to do in his match, it takes the edge off of both, really. So there's a lot of creative freedom with that. Billy does put a lot of emphasis on the promo aspect of it. The roster is great. We have amazing agents back there. We've got people like Tom Pritchard, Jazz is back there, Medusa. It's just a great environment, and it's a great mixture of new, fresh talent, which you've always got to develop and bring up, with the older guys being able to mentor them either as in-ring wrestlers or just as agents and giving their creative input. But I have not had a bad day there since I started. My only regret is I'm not there more often, because right now we're on a limited taping schedule, because we'll go in like every 6 weeks or so and tape 5 or 6 shows. But yeah, it's been nothing but a great time, and it's given me a second life,
Yeah, and you mentioning before Colby Carino, I seem to remember Billy Corgan and Steve Carino having an angle back in ECW, if I remember right, with a guitar on the stage and stuff like that. Did you meet Billy back then, or did you meet him just for this run now, or had you encountered him before?
I first met Billy in ECW in one of our Chicago shows. And I believe that was the night he broke a guitar over Louis Dangerously's head, or Sign Guy Dudley, as he used to be known back in the day.
Lou D'Angeli, as he's professionally known now.
Yeah, I met him back there, and he was around on the night that I blew my hand up in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
In late 2000, November of 2000 or so.
Yeah, so he's been pretty familiar with you for a long time.
Yeah, but it's been really cool working with him too, though. He's got a really good mind for the business and an appreciation, excuse me, for the old stuff.
And I think that makes it different, and that's what makes it stand out. Because, like, if you do everything that everybody else is doing in wrestling right now, you're not going to stand out. You're just trying to compete with everybody else. The NWA is kind of giving you a different flavor. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, and that what you just said is correct about being different. Boris Malenko used to say, if he was doing interviews, that if everybody else was screaming, he would whisper. If everybody whispers, then you scream. And I always try to tell wrestlers that I'm mentoring or managing or developing in some way, don't copy other wrestlers. Look for outside influences and bring them in. Look at I don't know, whatever inspires you. So at least it's something that's real and organic. Yeah. But if you take something different from another platform and bring it into wrestling, then it's something fresh, as opposed to, fifth generation Xerox of somebody trying to be The Rock or Ric Flair or Stone Cold or something.
It's interesting. I believe you're the second person to reference Boris Malenko promo advice on this show. The first was Bill Eadie we had on several weeks back.
And he used to manage Edie when he was a superstar.
Yeah, and he mentioned, just because I was asking him about his promo style a little bit, and he said that, the one thing that Boris Malenko always told him was to not say anything that you're not capable of doing. Like to make it realistic, not that you're going to, kill somebody or, make it really specific in your words so the fans actually believe what you're saying.
Yeah, I had an issue with that many years ago in TNA towards the end of my run there. And they wanted me to say something about my guy drinking blood or ripping his neck open. And I argued with them about it. And they said, no, go ahead and do it. So I told the wrestler who was Judas Macias, Ricky Banderas, I said, well, at the very least, because you can't do this, you got to make it look like you're going to try to do it. Look like you're trying to bite his neck or something, make the referee get in between it. Otherwise, we both look stupid, And on that same show, they had a wrestler talking about plucking somebody's eyeball out and drinking it in a cocktail glass. Like that's too over the top. Right. That's not going to happen. And I've always, in promos, tried to make sure that I don't say anything that I can't deliver, And frankly, even if I know we're not going to win, I'll find a way to talk around saying we're going to win. I'll talk about the violence and destruction that's going to happen. So I want, I can still put the excitement over, but I also don't look like I was wrong and I promised something I didn't deliver.
So I followed your career for a while. I don't go as far back as Smoky Mountain, but I did see you in the Blood Runs Cold stuff in WCW. I enjoyed your stuff in NWA TNA, the Disciples of the New Church against Raven, and then later with Abyss. You mentioned about like the outside sources of your character. How has your character evolved over time, and how have you kind of evolved with it?
Well, like as I said, I'm not based on any other wrestling manager or wrestling character. My inspirations came, and this is a lifelong thing from being a little kid, supervillains, cartoon, over the top, evil characters. I always rooted for them. Hell, when I watched Scooby-Doo, I rooted for the bad guy of the week who always got the mask pulled off and would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling kids. And as I got older, I was really fascinated with con artist, televangelist, and stuff like that. So when I first tried to get into the wrestling business, the character that I spun on the tape that I sent around to everybody, with no experience whatsoever, mind you, was the Reverend Jimmy Ray Snake Handler. Okay, so from there, when I got to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, when I was managing the Mummy, still I'm kind of a holy man, resuscitating a mummy. WCW was a slight continuation on that theme with being a collector of oddities. Sinister Minister, again, staying on that kind of sleazy religious con man angle. It has been, if you look at it from the start, there's been a slow but direct evolution. And you can still see where the roots of it were at the very beginning. If you were to watch a 2-hour best of compilation from the start to the finish. But every time I go away and come back, I change something a little bit, something in my approach or something in my appearance, my delivery. It's been, I've been able to stay basically true to who I am. I mean, the most off model I would have been was with the Blood Runs Cold thing.
Yeah.
Because that was such a goofy story. Of two Mortal Kombat characters that could have been from outer space or God knows where, fighting over Glacier's ancient helmet. It was that actually would have probably gotten over better now than it did then. It was the right gimmick at the wrong time.
And wrestling's all timing too, in a lot of ways. I was talking to a friend of mine recently about that angle, and he was like, I didn't hate it because the presentation was so different from what everything was in wrestling at that time. And if they really kind of committed to it, it might have actually made some money either through marketing and figures and that kind of stuff. What was your perspective of that time of your career, and also the talents of those performers that you had there?
Okay, well, all the guys personally involved in the blood runs cold angle, which would have been just 5 of us. Mortis, Canyon, Brian Clark, Ray Lloyd, Ernest Miller, all really talented guys. And the thing was, we weren't going to get any promo time to get it over, but we did stand out. The production on that entrance for Glacier was ridiculous. I forget, it was an astronomical amount of money it took to, every time he was on TV or at a house show, to move that equipment around with all the lights and lasers and the snow coming out of the sky. So even though we didn't get promo time, we had a hell of a spot because, of course, you had the NWO on top, and that was going to be the focus. And anything under that while you were wrestling, they were basically still talking about the NWO angle, Right. They might say, oh, he's got a headlock on, and then he'd go back to what Kevin Nash said previously and earlier in the night. But we had such a grandiose presentation on our way out. There's no way you couldn't take notice of us, So it was for where it was in the program, it was great. And for me, that was the first time in my life I'd ever made any money. I jumped into the big leagues for the first time, which is way different from doing independent wrestling and on such a much larger scope than doing Smoky Mountain Wrestling. It was like being thrown into the swimming pool, the deep end of the swimming pool, without a life preserver on. So you had. There was a learning curve, but I adapted really fast because the guys there were all great. All the veterans were really nice to me, and the referees, because I had a bunch of bad habits from doing outlaw wrestling shows before I got there, and the referees really were the ones who helped me out the most with refining what I did at ringside, and it was a great time to be alive. It was the Monday Night Wars era. And, wrestling, WCW at the time was the #1 rated show on cable TV. So, and all the spoils of war that came with that were fun too. It was an amazing time to be alive. And even though the angle didn't go where we would have liked it to go, a lot of it's embarrassing. If I go back and look at it now, a lot of times I want to cringe when I see it. But it's just like, when you're a kid, you go back and you look at your high school annual and you were wearing contact lenses or had braces or something,
Right.
It was still part of what it took to get you to where you are now.
Yeah.
And had I not gone to WCW, even though I was in a mid-card act that was kind of considered a cartoon, that at least gave me the clout to say that I was a WCW guy, which gave me leverage to get into ECW, so it's not something I regret at all.
Yeah. Canyon is absolutely one of my favorite performers from that era. I know you guys were close friends. What made him such a great talent?
He loved the wrestling business more than anything. It was all he talked about, all he wanted to do. He had the largest collection of VHS tapes of wrestling I'd ever seen. In fact, I met him through tape trading in the classifieds in the back of the Observer. Turned out he lived like 2 miles from me, But just 24 hours a day. He ate, slept, and breathed wrestling. And I helped him out early, but he got on the road, took off, and he went to Memphis and he stuck it out there for a while. Went to ECW for a little while, and underneath role, but he never bitched and complained. Sorry, he never complained about anything that he was given, and he was constantly learning, constantly innovating, and so helpful to the people coming up behind him, because he knew how hard it was for him to get a break. And he always tried to roll out the red carpet and make it easier for guys that he saw talent in, so that he could develop them and help them achieve their dreams.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating, even on the dark side of the ring on him. I did not know about Brian Cage's, relationship with him, where, somebody who's currently active now, I would never have realized that, the influence that Canyon had on him. He was just, you said the word innovative, and they always use that with him, innovator of offense, that kind of stuff. But like, just some of the stuff he was doing in the ring was just, he was just trying new things all the time.
Yeah, again, it's something that made him stand out. If you look back on, if you watch an entire Nitro episode from, say, 1997, I mean, now, as I said in Dark Side of the Ring, so many of the things that he used to do that were unique are just like transition moves in matches today, But if you look at him in the context of, say, watching the cruiserweight matches and the main event guys, his stuff was really, really unique. And he tried to come up with something new every week, and for the pay-per-views, he tried to come up with something crazy, like, I don't know if you remember, at one time he was the first guy to do the, I don't know what they'd even call it anymore. I know several teams stole it, where they did like a 3-man suplex.
Oh, like the Tower of Doom kind of.
Yeah. That was invented by Mortis and Wrath. And I think they did that on Ming and Barbarian. I forget which one they did it to. But he was always coming up with stuff like that. It's funny you mentioned Brian Cage. Now, I had seen Brian Cage in passing through Canyon when he was really young. And then fast forward to 2018 or so, I'm in a locker room when I was coming back and doing those little cameos for Impact. And there's this big, monstrous guy in the locker room. And I walked up and introduced myself to him. And he said, "Oh, yeah, you know me." And I looked at him like, how in the hell do I know him? And he said, "Oh, I've changed a little bit." And so when you go back and you look at that Dark Side of the Ring where Kenyon put him over in his hometown, he's a skinny guy. That's the guy I knew, and now he's the Incredible Hulk. But, if you look at Kenyon inspired him and told him, if you want to get over, you've got to improve your physical appearance. You've got to look like a star and whatnot. And, Brian did well for himself.
He did. And then we actually had Swerve Strickland on last week. And the one thing he noted about Cage, which I thought was interesting, and it kind of relates back to Canyon too, is he said nobody realizes that Cage has a really innovative mind for the business. And I kind of wonder, like, you see every week he comes out and he says, "Who better than Cage?" And it's like, well, right. I think I know where a lot of that came from. So as different as you are, is there anybody, you mentioned not really being based on other managers, who were some of your personal favorite managers? And are there any traces of them anywhere in your work?
Well, I mean, like I love all the Mount Rushmore managers. I love Bobby Heenan and Cornette, Paul Heyman, and I mean, all the classics, the Three Wise Men of the East from the old territory days in New York, Blassie, Albano, and the Grand Wizard. And I think spiritually, I'm probably closest aligned to the Grand Wizard. And funny thing is this, I used to see the Grand Wizard in the magazines when I was a little kid, but I lived in South Carolina, so we did not get WWE programming. I went back, when I got older and started getting access to all the tapes. There's a lot of similarity in our delivery, plus the sound of our voice and, the vocabulary and whatnot. But, it wasn't because I was trying to copy the Grand Wizard, but you know what happened with me, my delivery comes from when I would read comic books, and of course I told you I loved the supervillains. The superhero cartoons that were on TV were very cheesy because they were meant for children. So you didn't get the heels in the cartoons were stupid, you know, and they couldn't do anything or particularly be vicious. So when I would read the comic books and I was reading Dr. Octopus or the Green Goblin or the Joker, cutting promos, monologuing as they all do before they finally get knocked out by the hero, there was a sound I heard in my head, the way I imagined that delivery to be, because I certainly wasn't able to get it out of the cartoons. And that's pretty much what I channel when you hear me fully get into character. That's me channeling the voice I heard in my head reading Marvel Comics when I was 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, I totally hear the Grand Wizard now that you're saying that. You know, I like watching old classic wrestling when I have a chance to, and watching some of his, you know, McMahon, some of those kind of promos that he did. Like, I always love that delivery. It's always if they ever come up with like a WWF like biopic, I'm gonna vote for you to be in the Grand Wizard role.
Well, you know, when I was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, you know, the Grand Wizard used to be called Abdullah Farouk when he managed the Sheik, right?
Yep.
Okay. So Cornette put a fez and sunglasses on me, much like Abdullah Farouk. Now, of course, I would have never been able to have seen Abdullah Farouk because that would have been TV from the 60s, or late 60s. But, you know, it was fun doing that because I remember I could, in those days, of course, it's very green. But the minute I put on those sunglasses and that fez, there was a complete personality transformation. Like I called down the muse, you know, and became that other person. And over the years, it's at times I feel like pro wrestling has caused me to develop a completely separate functioning personality. You know, like what's it called? Whatever, the multiple personality disorder kind of thing.
Right.
Because the gentleman in the red suit, as I call him, he's far better spoken than I am. You know, he thinks differently. I mean, when I'm in that zone, I guess it's like a method actor or something. I'm completely possessed. It feels like something else has come over me. You know, you're listening to me right now. My voice might be gravelly, but this is not the guy you see on TV, you know.
Right.
But I am completely. I don't know. That's one of the fun things about wrestling. And when I got out of it for a little while, you know, I really missed. It was almost like I lost a friend, you know.
Yeah.
It's. Okay, go on with what you're saying. I got lost.
No, I was gonna move on to something we call the 3 count now. It's gonna be 3 quick questions and your answers. So, first question: I hear that you have hosted karaoke, and I am a karaoke regular myself. What is your go-to song?
God, depends on how screwed up my voice is. My voice has had to change a lot over the years. Let me just think real quick. If I had to come out swinging, Devil with a Blue Dress On, or something like that.
Nice.
something gravelly, scratchy.
Have you ever had the opportunity to do karaoke with Bill Apter?
Yes, in fact, I did.
Me too.
Greg Price brought me out 2 or 3 times to do karaoke during his Mid-Atlantic Wrestling conventions, and Bill was there. Bill's quite the showman, and I understand he runs it himself too, doesn't he? Somewhere.
I don't know. He does a few. He gets booked to do some on some of the conventions he does. But one of the times I went with him, I was fascinated because what he does is he talks to everybody in the room before he goes up and sings. That way, when the host says, "All right, now here we go. We got Bill," everybody in the room just goes, oh, it's Bill. This is great. It's fantastic. It's just, he's really fun to, I did Say It Ain't So by Weezer when I was with him and a
Yeah.
friend of his, and somebody who was an ECW fan came up to me and said, hey, did you do that because of the Sandman and Mikey Whipwreck thing when they played the video to that song? And I said, that's exactly why I did that song.
Well, you said it, we were talking earlier about bringing things from outside sources. One of the reasons my karaoke business has been so successful for the last 2 decades is I didn't act like a karaoke host. I acted like a pro wrestler. So I'm selling booze like I'm selling tickets to the cage match in the Omni, and I brought that kind of energy to it and whatnot. So that made me stand out.
Yeah, that's great. I would love to do karaoke with you someday.
Well, we'll have to get you down here.
Yeah,
all right,
seriously.
Question number 2.
Next question. Any funny real life places you've been fully dressed as the Sinister Minister regalia in?
Court. Oh, on a dare, I had to deal with a traffic issue in Georgia. I had to come back to Georgia to go to court for it. And I think it was Tony Mamaluke dared me to show up in full regalia. And I did. And the judge was not happy at all. He was looking around the room, just kind of scanning whoever was. There were, like, I was out on the bench, but I guess there were people on the side that had to do something that were about to go up next. And he was scanning the room, and he did a double take and looked at me. By the time I went up there to plead no contest, he barked and he threw the book at me. So yeah, that didn't work out well. And
And then last question, aside from currently, what part of your career did you think was the best representation of you?
Probably the run. It's kind of a tie. My feud with Raven, with the new church, because that feud really became more about just me and Raven, and in fact, that's where I hit my stride. I feel where every day when I went into work, I know what I'm doing now, and I've got this.
I enjoyed that.
Somewhere between the start of the Raven feud on through to Abyss. The Abyss run was great. That was a lot of fun. He is a good friend, but just a hell of a worker, and he left pieces of his body all over the place. I used to always tell him, man, you're working too hard, don't kill yourself.
Yeah, but I was going to ask you about him before. What was it like the first time you met him, and just his mind for the business is something that people seem to respect an awful lot.
He's another one of those guys that must get possessed by the muse, because if you meet him in real life, he is the sweetest, nicest, like borderline insecure person you've ever met. Always looking to please, looking for approval, and then he gets out there and starts snorting and bucking and slicing people open with barbed wire. And he has a super mind for the business. He was unofficially agenting backstage before he ever actually had a title as such, an Impact. Yeah, really, really good talent. A lot of fun. That was, and that was a time when they gave me a lot of freedom. They would give me bullet points and just let me, run with them, because when they try to hand me scripts in those days, I would just basically toss them out and say, reduce this to 3 points, tonight in the cage, this is what's going to happen, and leave it there and let me fill in the blanks. And that's how I do best. And that's that run with Abyss, between the Raven and Abyss thing. A lot of highlights there. And of course, like you said, you can't count now, but because it's not over yet. Right. I'm still in the middle of it. But it's NWA has just been a great experience. I feel like I'm part of the business again. And before we go, let's also remember to get everybody to buy the pay-per-view, NWA Samhain. Go to nwatix.com. It will be available on Fight Network, FITE, or Fight TV.
Fight.tv. Yep.
Fight.tv. That's October 28th, Cleveland, Ohio. Get your tickets now. It's sure to be one spectacular night.
Father James Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me today on Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. I've really enjoyed this. As I said, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and I was really looking forward to this.
Well, thank you, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.